you're like me, then you like to air the ball out. With this week being EA's rankings week, I figured there was no better time than now to release the top 10 wide receivers in college football 25. So sit back and relax. So jumping over to the number 10 pick, we have Isaiah Bond out of Texas. He's a transfer from Alabama. You'll probably hear that a lot with the retiring of Coach Saban. But last season, the 5'11 speedster had 48 receptions, 668 yards to go with his 4 touchdowns. One of those 4 touchdowns was the game winner in the Iron Bowl. So he was the guy who on 4th and 31 came down with the ball with 32 seconds left to help lead Alabama to that 27-24 victory at Auburn. So between Coach Sark and Quinn Ewers, I think this is a much better situation for Bond. And then, Sark, he's always going to have his boys right. And then when we think about the departure of Xavier Worthy as well as A.D. Mitchell, we can expect a much more receiver-friendly situation for Bond next season relative to Alabama last year. Coming in at number 9, we have LSU's C.J. Daniels. So LSU just lost Jaden Daniels to the draft, but they were able to reel in a different Daniels and C.J. via the transfer portal. C.J. was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school at 4 stars. He's 6'2", so he does have size, but he still possesses that great short area quickness, so he's a threat to really score from anywhere on the field. As a true freshman at Liberty last season, he had 55 receptions, 1,067 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Similar to Texas, LSU just lost both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. to the draft. So they are in need of a pass catcher, and that role is kind of already defined for CJ. LSU also has a very deep quarterback room. We all know Jaden Daniels, but Gary Nussmeier, he is definitely a name to be on the lookout for this upcoming season at quarterback. I know Coach Brian Kelly is definitely hoping that CJ is able to fill at least half the shoes of Neighbors and Brian Thomas. And then moving over to number 8, we have Miami's Xavier Restrepo. Last season, Restrepo had 85 receptions, 1,092 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Those 85 receptions were enough for a school record, which is saying something considering all the receivers that have come out of Miami over the years. Additionally, he's only the 6th Hurricanes receiver to break 1,000 yards in a season. So the 5th-year senior is basically just looking to build on that historic last season. At 5'10", he's not the biggest nor the fastest, but he has good hands and great ball tracking skills. So in terms of the quarterbacks at Miami did lose Tyler Van Dyke, so he transferred over to Wisconsin. But in my opinion, Cam Ward is much of an upgrade. If you watch any of the, final season of the Pac-12, unfortunately, Cam Ward was balling at Washington. So I think Restrepo is in for a monster season. Coming in at number 7, we have Ole Miss's Tre Harris. So Harris had 54 receptions, 985 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He originally started his career at Louisiana Tech and had his breakout season there in 2022 with a total of 10 touchdown catches. After that, he ultimately transferred over to Ole Miss, so this will be his 2nd consecutive season down in Mississippi. The wide receiver room at Ole Miss is, unnecessarily deep as they've kind of been in recent years, just between, the Elijah Moores, the A.J. Browns, the DK Metcalfs. So Harris will have guys like Jordan Watkins as well as South Carolina transferring Juice Wells to take attention from him. Ultimately, I think that's a great thing for Harris's production. But standing at 6'2", 205, he has that great combo of both size and speed. He's definitely more of like a speedster than he is just a huge possession catch type of guy. But it should be fun to load up and play with Tre Harris next season. Coming in at number 6, we have NC State's Kevin Concepcion. So last season, KC had 71 receptions, 839 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. Keep in mind, he's just a true freshman. There was a game against UNC last year where he had 131 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving, and then he also had 11 rushes for 55 yards. He was able to win the ACC Rookie of the Year. He was really utilized a lot towards the line of scrimmage on jet sweeps, shovel passes, and screen passes. Like I said earlier, he's a true ATH, so he often lined up in the backfield as well. You can tell by all of those rushing yards he was able to rack up last season. And then he was also the only FBS player with more than 700 receiving yards and 250 rushing yards. So I would be on the lookout for KC moving over to his sophomore season at NC State. At number 5, I have Tez Johnson out of Oregon. So finally one of the more big name guys. Tez originally began his college football journey at Troy before transferring to Oregon in 2023. Last season he had 86 receptions, 1,182 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And he was technically the number 2 receiver last year. So if you watch Oregon at all, you know Troy Franklin was the guy. So with Troy Franklin's departure to the NFL, Tez is going to have a lot more room to rack up some wild numbers. And then we know they lost Bo Nix, but they have Dylan Gabriel transferring over from Oklahoma. So I wouldn't fret at their quarterback position at all. Tez is one of those guys who has the great combo of exceptional speed as well as the fluid route running. So watching him in and out of his breaks, is really a thing of beauty. Moving over to number 4, we have Egbuka out of Ohio State. So last year he had a disappointing 41 receptions, 515 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Definitely a rather disappointing season when you consider his breakout season in 2022, where he had 1,151 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns on 74 receptions. So the disappointing season was pretty much explained by a midseason ankle sprain that basically sidelined him for a few weeks, and then he was just never the same after coming back for that entire season. You combo that with the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is now in the Cardinals. I think Egbuka, it's finally his time. He's finally Ohio State's true number 1 alpha receiver. He personally is my pick to be the Biletnikoff Award winner next season. Coming in at number 3, I have Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. He's better known as T-Mac by the Arizona fans, but after an impressive freshman year in 2022 where he was able to catch 39 passes for 702 yards, McMillan broke out as a sophomore. Last year, he hauled in 90 passes for 1,402 yards and 10 touchdowns. There's literally no returning Power 5 receiver that had more receiving yards than T-Mac last year. He's that prototypical X receiver build, standing at 6'5". He's more so known for his large catch radius as well as his excellent hands. He also finished with the lowest drop rate amongst Power 5 receivers. Depending on where you look, he had somewhere between 2 and 4 drops all year long. So he will have a new head coach as well as a new quarterback this season. Jetfish went ahead and headed over to be the head man at Washington. And then at number 2, I have Travis Hunter out of Colorado. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. Travis is probably the most versatile athlete in all of college football. Probably the most versatile college football player we've seen in a long while. So he's definitely a one-of-a-kind athlete, and he will be top 5 at 2 different positions on College Football 25, I think almost certainly. But after beginning his career at Jackson State before following Coach Prime up to Boulder, he recorded 57 catches for 721 yards and 5 touchdowns at Colorado on offense alone last year. So I think Travis is ultimately going to go out with the bang this season. He's going to top 1K on offense, probably come out with 5-6 picks before he ends up being a top 10 NFL draft pick, and then he moves over to DB permanently in the NFL. So this will probably be his last time on offense, and I'm expecting him to go out big. And then coming in at number 1, we have Missouri's Luther Burden III. I think this one is pretty obvious. He's pretty much the number 1 receiver no matter where you look. He could possibly be a top 5 pick in the draft next year. But last season he had 86 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He also had a super low drop rating, and then he finished number 3 in the nation in yards after the catch with 711. So he's a yak monster. Safe to say his after the catch ability is absolutely elite. And then his 1,200 receiving yards, that ranks 2nd in the SEC as well as 9th nationally. On top of that, probably won't be able to do this as much in real life, but in College Football 25, he will be a monster in the return game. As a freshman, before he permanently moved over to the slot receiver position, he had a punt return and a kick return for 6. Plus, he has a potato chip NIL deal, so I thought that was pretty cool. But ultimately, that's going to be it for me in this video. I hope you enjoyed this top 10 wide receivers list in College Football 25. If you watched this far in the video, make sure you comment. But yeah, other than that, I will catch you all in the next one.